is this it? Is this it? There's got to be something else. There must be something else.
So you were telling yourself this?
Yeah.
You really remember that?
Yeah.
Because I guess I want to say, like, I want people to think you did it and they can do it.
I used to get quite bullied a lot, and I got a knock on the door. I was about 15, 16, and it was a group that always picked on me, and his name was Andre, and he said, look, I want to apologize for the bullying, have you got a minute? So I walked outside, round the corner, and there were four of them, and they assaulted me, and I fell to the ground. Because sometimes, it takes time to get back up, whether it takes a week or a month or a year, but make sure you get back up.
This episode of A Beacon of Hope is proudly brought to you by Campfire Studios. To find out more, visit campfirestudios.co.nz. 2, 3, 4. A Beacon of Hope is a weekly podcast that shines a light on the human spirit and explores the power of hope in our lives. Join me, Will Fleming, as I talk to people from all walks of life about where they find hope and how they use it to navigate life's challenges.
Be good, be safe, and be happy.
In this week's episode of A Beacon of Hope, I talk to an extraordinary man, Vitale Lafaele. Born in Samoa, Vitale, or VJ, made his mark by serving as an elite soldier in the SAS and later becoming one of New Zealand's most decorated police officers. From an immigrant son facing poverty and discrimination to high-stakes operations, Vitale's story is a testament to profound inner strength and an unyielding determination. Even after career-ending strokes that left him legally blind, VJ rose again, transforming his destiny into a celebrated keynote speaker. His memoir, A Canoe Before the Wind, narrates his inspiring journey, shining a light on the power of self-belief, resilience, and hope in a life lived with unwavering values. Let's kick into it, BJ. Thank you, man, for coming. And thank you for just allowing time, for me. I reached out to you during the kind of early COVID days. Yeah. I'm someone who thought, what can I do as the world was feeling like it was, and it really was. It was starting to cave in, and we all didn't know what was around the corner. And maybe we never know, but I did a Google search, and I'm like, who's the people I want to arm myself with knowledge, Yeah. And I have this vehicle of podcasting, and of course your name came up, and I think I found out how to contact you, and you're like, sure. So we did our first podcast, and now we get to sit here today and to celebrate the release of your book.
Thank you.
So we won't talk about it at the end. Let's get straight into, can you just give us that kind of bio of the book, the name, where people can buy it, and then we'll dig a bit deeper.
Oh, sure, yeah. So the name of the book is A Canoe Before the Wind, or Matangi. It's an old Samoan proverb, and it's basically something that moves quickly, and the wind isn't required to move the canoe, and it's self-propelling and self-navigating, and it finds and charters its own journey. So that was the title that we landed on.
And I'm a metaphorical kind of person. I love storytelling growing up. I try and find the hidden meanings of things. What does that title mean if people take it really serious?
I guess it's the wind is not required to push you along. And
what's the wind mean though for us?
Yeah,
something,
yeah, self-propelled, self-navigating, chartering your own journey.
That you can do it without something pushing you.
That's right.
And you really believe that?
And I do. And when I was trying to find a title for the book, I was thinking about all this. I hadn't written a book before, Will, and I couldn't really land on a title, and the title was suggested to me by Alex Headley, who's a New Zealand publisher for HarperCollins, And he suggested this because he said, after my journey with the book and everything, it was so suitable, basically because it's specific, and that's where our journey started, but also it encapsulates me. And this is from him and the team that they've got around for it, how appropriate this would be.
And the book is your life story so far?
I guess we talk about things that do happen, and when I first left the police in 2016, I'm a great storyteller. And when I was in the police, I liked to talk to communities and so forth. And when I left in 2015, I felt there was a real gap in something that I was really passionate about. So I just emailed Jim Haney, who was in charge of New Zealand Speaking Bureau. And I emailed him and said, hey, I'm a broken down cop. I love storytelling, but I'm not a professional speaker. Long story short, he took me under his wing, and I did about 1.5 years of speaking while he critiqued me in public settings like RSAs, and to the point where I managed to get into professional speaking. And in 2019, I was doing a professional leadership keynote for Tauranga City Council executive leaders. And following that, unbeknown to me, was a gentleman called Emlyn Hatch, and he rang me on the Monday and he said, look, I heard your story on last week, and have you ever heard of TED Talks, and would you consider that, because you can only get invited onto that? I said, oh gosh, yes. And he said he's a New Zealand coach and also the rep for TEDx. Long story short, we did about 10 weeks of intensive training, and I presented that, which is called The Invisible Leader, in TEDx in Tauranga in July 2021, which was a great privilege to be invited onto a global platform. Then on the Monday following that, Alex Headley rings me and says, look, following your TEDx talk, it's an amazing story. Have you ever considered writing a book? Have you heard of HarperCollins? And I wasn't being funny. I said, I've heard about Collins dictionaries. And he said, oh, look, we're just a publishing firm in New Zealand, and would you consider writing a book? You've got an amazing story. And it was in July 2021, and now 2 years later it gets published. So it was never an intention at all to write the book. But if I can, I wrote memoirs when I was really sick, and the memoirs, because I had 3 strokes, heart surgery over about 2 years, and because of the strokes, I thought that I could die any time. So I just wrote these memoirs, which was about 10,000 words, and it was something that I can give to my kids and my grandchildren who weren't born there, that they can have some true understanding of the grandparents, me, what sort of people we were, the way we thought, and our journeys to this point. So if I did pass away tonight, it gave them something that they could really reflect and see where we come from. So Alex said, have you got anything, have you ever written anything? I said, I've got 10,000 words of memoirs for my family. And he asked for them, and that was a cornerstone of the book. And everything else was around those 10,000 words.
So for people who are interested, what's in your book? I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about it today, but, about your story, but what's in it for them? Because I think there's going to be lessons that people can take into their own lives, right?
Yeah. I guess one of the things, it's an immigrant son's story, someone that's come from another country, coming here and making sense and making an opportunity out of nothing and in a foreign land. And I think whether it's in the 50s, 60s or 2021, and all the displaced people around the world that seek refuge or come to these places, that there's real hope and opportunity there, whether it be language barriers or ethical barriers, that whatever those are, there's a real meaning and a real opportunity to have a really good life if you apply yourself and in terms of what I did. Yeah, so I think that's really it. Let nothing get in your way, and that's really what I did. Well, a lot of things got in my way. But, yeah.
I mean, in the studio today is my 15-year-old, and I brought him here. He's going to talk to you after the podcast about, future endeavours. But when you were 15, what did you think life would be for you?
It was pretty gloom back there. 15, growing up in Greyland, there was a lot of, and no disrespect, there was a lot of racism, there was a lot of bullying, and we were pigeonholed into factories and working manual work, and there wasn't much hope. And in the Samoan culture, and helping with parents never being there, working 2-3 jobs. It's the older siblings. We get around. We look after the younger siblings, do the chores, and you get consumed with that. And as a 15-year-old, I couldn't see myself and I wasn't all that bright. I was failing exams for whatever reason. School C was coming up, and I was dreading that, and I was failing. And I thought, where is it for me? I didn't know. I actually didn't know. Because I knew where I was heading, and it was heading into manual work, because I just didn't have the intelligence, I thought at that time, for a better future for myself, and also the pressures from my parents, because like all our families, they came here, they worked 2-3 jobs, cooking, cleaning, working in factories, and also the burden of, they didn't want their children to follow them into the factories. They wanted their children to excel and move on, yet I was heading to the factory. So there was a lot of pressure on a 15-year-old to navigate what was really not a good place.
And you've had a few milestones in your life that maybe we can touch on today, but for your parents, what was it like for the bigger ones? What was it like when, I guess they didn't really know what the SAS was, or no one really did, because you were part of their kind of first cohort there. But, when your police endeavours and that stuff, were they really proud?
Of course, because my dad died when I was 22, right. So he passed away at 47. But they're very proud, but very, there's a lot of humility that goes on, and also not a lot of understanding. We're going back to a place where there was no Google, no internet. There was the Auckland Star in the evening, and the New Zealand Herald, and there was no news. News finished at about 6 o'clock at night. So the world was starved of the information base that we have. When I went into the SA, I didn't even know what it stood for, let alone what it was. So to be proud, they didn't understand, they didn't know, and when they came to the parade, they were wondering, where is this place? So yeah, it was a lot of misunderstanding as to what it was back then. But yeah, I'm sure there were.
And I guess when I asked that, I'm thinking too, in that context that you just talked about, people probably didn't have time to be proud.
No.
It was carry on. It was pay the bills.
Yeah.
It was look after the next family coming from the islands.
Yes,
right?
That's right. And we were brought up, and I remember Dad, he didn't have much, and he really kept you grounded. Like, there was no real celebration. The celebration was them working hard for our families, and all we had to do was concentrate on school. And there was nothing else other than that. We didn't plan for dinners or social events, because there was nothing. There was nothing to live for.
Did Aotearoa harden them? Do you think they were like that back in the islands? That's something that's come up a few times in my conversations, that the racism, the not understanding the laws, that you needed a license to drive, and getting behind the 8 ball, not meaning to, you just were. That it must have hardened them, right?
Yeah, I guess it created its own challenges, because they didn't know. They didn't know what getting a license was. When I went to school at 5 and 6, I couldn't speak a word of English. I often talk about, we came here, we never experienced anything under 25 degrees. We stayed in our bubble for 3-4 years, and the first time apart from playing hopscotch in the footpath and going up to the dairy at 5 or 6, we were pushed into the outside world, and we started school. We couldn't speak English. We were different. We spoke in one few of us. So it was the same with our parents. They didn't know. And then the pressures of living in this new world as immigrants do. What is it? What's a driver's license? We can't really speak the language. It must have been hugely, and on top of that, trying to work and find money. I couldn't understand or even think of the pressures our forefathers were under. And I guess that's what drove me too, because I often used to think, well, what I've got is easy, to be fair. Yeah.
And I guess that mindset would have served you in some of the more challenging times.
Yeah.
But before we get there,
Sure.
looping back to when you were 15, and I skipped us forward, but I'll bring us back. So when do you finish school? 16, 17?
Yeah, 17, and I attempted school here twice and bombed out, as I do.
Yeah.
I did. And then I left, and my first job was a labourer up at the old Ministry of Works out at South Auckland with no future. And, there was shame there. More than once or twice, my parents told me that this is what was expected and the hardship and fair enough too. So I had the burden of that, the burden of navigating what am I going to do and working with some real hard adults. Hard, I was a kid, but there I was unloading trucks and working at Mangere and the hard toil of it. As we, catching trains in the early morning and then getting home at night, walking home in the rain, it was just...
You remember it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Never forget it.
Never forget it. Never forget that. But then I kept thinking, you know what? My parents they were the driving force, thinking, imagine doing that, leaving a land back then, coming here, not speaking the language, don't know where you're going to. I mean, that's courage.
I mean, if you were a kid today and that was going on, you'd probably have really negative mental health. So what kept you strong? What was your hope then? What changed in your life around that time, those crucial times, 15, 16, 17? Because what were you thinking? Like, I've just got to keep going.
Yeah, I guess it was to make my parents proud, that coming to New Zealand wasn't a waste. And here I am also working as a factory worker, and my dad must have been so disappointed. But also, what is their legacy? What have they got to show for their toil? And also for me is this it? Is this it? There's got to be something else. There must be something else.
So you were telling yourself this?
Yeah.
You really remember that?
Yeah.
Because I guess I want to say, like, I want people to think you did it and they can do it.
Yeah.
But where did that come from? Where did that little voice or affirmation?
Yeah. I just reflect on my parents now, and my mum, she used to, and she sort of says, what's holding you back? What's holding you back? Just get on with it. She even says to me, look, just get on with it. And my dad, when he used to watch me playing rugby, he only saw one game, he used to say, when I get knocked down, he'd say, "Gulunga," and gulunga means to get up, and whamalosi, be strong. And those words whether it's on the field or wherever it takes you in life, because sometimes, it takes time to get back up, whether it takes a week or a month or a year, but make sure you get back up. And that just resonated in me, and in watching them strive, getting out of bed, working Tuesday. That's the environment I grew up in, and a lot of us did, and the racism and all those sort of things. But the thing for me was, you can take that negatively. You can work in being intimidated and racism and put that in a negative context, or being downtrodden, or I'm no good for anything else. Where my mindset was, keep going, like with racism and stuff. It wasn't New Zealand's fault. I look at that. It was just the maturity of a nation coming to grips with new people coming into to their land. And when I went into the police, I used that in terms of diversity and inclusiveness. And I headed, along with two others, when that Closing the Gaps in 299. And I put my hand up for that because I wanted to use it in a positive way, and that people that were exposed to that in my time, and people won't be exposed to it again. So it was shifting the negative to the positive and making it meaningful. And it was so hard back then. It was really hard. Like, there was an incident where I used to get quite bullied a lot, and I had my 4 cousins come over from the islands to stay at our house. And they were sitting there having a few beers. They were older than me with my dad. And I got a knock on the door. I was about 15, 16, and it was a group that always picked on me. And his name was Andre. And he said, look, I want to apologize for the bullying. Have you got a minute? So I walked outside, round the corner, and there were 4 of them, and they assaulted me, and I fell to the ground. And I got up, dusted myself off, and I was so tempted to go and tell Dad and my 4 cousins who had just come from the islands. And I didn't. And I don't know why. I was 15, 16. And I thought, that'll be the easy way to do it, and I can fight my own fights. And I remember going and just wiping the blood off my face and going, she'll be right, But I was tempted just to run and say, Dad, and it would have been a big brawl outside, and they would have got a taste of Samoans coming here. but it was just something I did at that early age. I don't know what drove that, but I think it was, I'll deal with things my way and so forth. So, it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe, I'd like to think the romantic part of me would like to think you bottled it up, used that energy, but the other part may be that you looked at society and didn't want to cause another scene by having Dad or your cousins getting in trouble for beating up the white kids, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I just didn't want. One was I can sort it myself. Something, and the other was protecting my cousins, because they would have been out there in the flesh. But for me, as a 15, 16-year-old that just got smacked over to think like that, I don't know where that thinking came from.
Very adult and forced into adulthood, eh?
Yeah, forced.
Yeah.
Because, siblings and caring for them and doing the chores, and you just grow up, you're living in poverty on top of each other. There was 7 of us, then it was 15 of us, using our house as a base. So you just grow up and you mature very quickly beyond your years.
And that 17 range when you're, labouring, what changes? Yeah. Where does the symbol of the SAS come in where you didn't even know what it meant,
But to be fair, I always wanted to be in the police, and I applied 5 times, to be fair. I applied when I was 17, and I failed miserably because of my, I couldn't spell properly, so I failed the English test. And over 5-6 years, I applied, and I got in on my fifth attempt. So I've always been interested in that line of work.
But you're also not shy to have another go.
No.
Hey, there must have been something to say, go back again.
Yeah.
Most of us try something once and feel embarrassed and we don't try again. Not you.
No, I took myself to English school at Seton High. They had English classes at night, and I thought, okay. And I went back there, did night classes after factory work, and managed to get a school C result. And then I took that back to the recruiting office and said, hey, I got my ticket. And he said, okay, well, you can have another go. And it went over 5 years, 5 times.
I bet they liked that, though. Do they like you turning up and having another go?
Yeah, no, they did. They said, oh, you again. Not you again. Oh, my goodness. Go find another uniform. Okay. I found another uniform.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you joined the police first?
No, the SAS first.
And what was that story? How did you actually transition from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I managed to buy a car, and I was in my little 120Y driving to Mangere, actually. And an ad came on and said, "Oh, your first time ever open to civilians, join the SAS." I thought, well, what's this? But I knew it was something to do with guns, because it was an army advert. So yeah, I popped along there the first open day, and there were over 300 actually. I was talking to the recruiter back then, and they never did it again because of the huge failure rates. So all the wannabe warriors from the North Island came up, and I went along there, and over 16 months, 4 got selected, and I was one of them.
4 out of 300.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hard case.
All of that training that you grew up with, do you think that's what helped you not get, because that's incredible to make it out of that many people, right?
I didn't really think too much about that, because I didn't know the numbers or anything, but I do know that there were less and less as the months went on. Even to now, I don't think it's all that incredible. I really don't. I really don't. I think anyone can do it. It's to me, it's just a numbers game, but I don't regard myself special or anything. Things just fell in my lap, and I managed to get through. And that's how I look at life. It's just a consequence of your action. And if I didn't get through, I'd just find something else. Yeah.
Well, that 16 months, were you here? Were you like
yeah.
But I guess, was it like the army where you stay in a little camp and stuff?
Yeah, Papakura, and then we do the basic and all those types of things. And they join us in with the regular force, but they don't know that we're civilians because we're not identified. And I guess I look back, and in the book, I don't actually talk about what I did in there, but I talk about my feelings and how I connected with the values of the SAS and what they were really looking for, in terms of why for, and there's some deep meaning in that. It's not how strong, intelligent, or they can teach all that, but what was it? Why? What were the characteristics they were wanting, and why for? Because there were people much bigger, stronger than me, more intelligent. But what were the key to picking me? And that's brought out in the book a lot. Yeah.
I mean, just for us who are going to be listening and heading towards reading your book, are there a couple bullet points that people can grab onto? Because I'm just trying to work through the idea of adversity and using that to propel you. Or if you don't have adversity, using something to propel you, because like the name of it, you've got to somewhat you can't just rely on the wind. And, we're all kind of thinking and hoping that there is something in this world for us. But it's a really tough thing to know that there is.
Yeah.
And you sometimes got to have someone take you under their wing, or hope to hear an advert, or get back up and dust yourself off.
Sure, yeah. And I actually don't know. I knew there was something better for me. I did have that passion of uniform. So everyone's got a passion. Everyone's got that dream and my dream was always in the police. And that's something that drove me, because everyone's got a dream. Where do they want to be? And deep down inside, because my uncle was a senior sergeant of police, so police was ingrained in me as the thing I wanted to really get, if I was to put it simply. I had tried to get in and I got knocked back. And then the SAS came along. I didn't know what it was, but it was in the army, and I thought, well, that's a uniform. That's something I can focus on. And everybody has it as well, whether they want to be a chef or a plumber, whatever that is. And I guess what resonates with me is the discipline and the focus and the want and the hope to get what you want. And don't let anything stop you from doing that. And once you know the purpose of where you want to go, then go for it. And don't let anything pull you back or say you can't do it. So I went there, I got knocked back, Army came along, I got into that, and 4 times later, they said, well, if you can get into the SAS, you can get into the police. And then I got into the police. So I sort of went around in a roundabout way. But in saying that, if I hadn't if I'd got straight in as a 17, 18-year-old, through that adversity, I would never have found the SAS and tested myself. Because really at the end of it, I think it was a stepping stone to police. And I got back in. And that's what they said. They said, well, Sonny, if you can get into the police, into the SAS, for goodness sake, you can definitely get into the police. And then I was allowed in. And I never lost focus of the police. But the SAS took me around in a bit of a circle.
It's a nice thing in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just never know.
You never know. And I didn't realise how big an obstacle. It was harder to get into the SA than the police. But my dream was the police. And I guess whatever you set yourself in life, don't ever, be disciplined in what you want and keep going. And if you can't get over it, go around it, but you'll get there. And I guess that's the message that I took for myself.
It's such an important message. I just feel like that is not, people are reaching this point where we don't believe that to be true. We think we're not here to contribute, or, you look at the mental health rates, they're skyrocketing, and I don't know why exactly. I mean, there's factors around it, but, there's factors around everything, and I'm just trying to work out how do you impart that piece of optimism, and I think you're doing that. You're saying, well, go back to what you love and go around it. I mean, it's kind of straightforward, but only if you really believe that it's true.
You can, and I didn't have that belief. I didn't have belief about intelligence because I wasn't intelligent. I didn't have belief about my own physical being and mental being until I pushed myself to those dark places. No one can prepare yourself to dark places. And when you take yourself to those dark places, then you know the extent in terms of how far you can go. Coming through with I'd been in dark places for years, even before I left school. And then coming into the SAS and then finally reaching the police, where I tried 5 times to get in and stayed for 30 years. For 30 years. What is that? What does that mean? What do we get out of that? And never losing sight, having that laser focus on what you want to do. And don't let anybody ever say, you can't do it, and don't say, can I do that? Say, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Of course you can do that, and really believe in, because no one else believes in it. Not your buddy, not your mum, not your dad. That strength's got to come from within.
We've done a couple other podcasts over the years, and I always think about something you told me that, hopefully I remember it right. In the SAS, you'd have this little game with yourself where you'd be like, what's next? Or bring it. Like it was never too much. And I always thought about that, because if too much is happening to you, I've tried it a little bit by saying, come on then, bit more. I can do this. Or not I can do it, but almost like you're showing off to your pals that it's not too much. A little bit of fake it till you make it.
It's like, oh gosh, too easy.
That's it.
Yeah, too easy. Gosh, that was hard.
Trauma.
And it's almost that little mind in your head going, it's really tough. Things are really, really hard. But there's people out there that have done it more than me. People climb Mount Everest and stuff. So what's my excuse? And really believe that. Because once you lose that belief, then you've got to the end of your journey. And don't let anybody pigeonhole you and say, oh, Vitale, you'll be good at this, or you'll be good at that. You navigate. And I've had that in police where, you'll be good at you fade or this and that. I said, no. I'll do what I want to do, in a very positive way. So it's, Yeah, I don't know if that, it's just, yeah.
Name me a second book, too easy.
But it is hard. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
It's,
and, that's the realization I've had. It's brutally hard.
yeah,
And if you're lucky, you get a sniff at something that'll make it a tiny bit easier.
Yeah.
But there's no getting away from it. And I think that's okay to know.
Yeah.
Because it is in your relationships, in your passions, in your hope that there's a spot for you in this craziness, that there's a lesson in everything. And maybe that leads us to, like, if you look at your story like a movie or a book, you get all these milestones, Vitale, and then you almost, like, it took you 5 times to get into the police, and you get kind of kicked out, not on your terms. Yeah, you have these strokes and heart attacks, and it sets the clock back to zero for you, doesn't it?
It does, and really, it's when I look back then, and they talk about my why or my purpose or what I wanted to do, and it was getting into the police. That was my purpose. That's my why. That's what I really, really wanted, and I got there. The SAS just came at a juncture, which was a uniform. To be fair, I didn't know what it was, and I applied myself and got in. Because I would have stayed in the SAS if I didn't get back in the police. I'd probably be broken. I'd be dead right now. But and people were saying, you've gone through all that pain to get into the SAS, and you're leaving to go into the police. But then all these years later, when now I'm disabled and I lose my job and that sort of thing, I had to reset and then redefine what my new purpose was. Yeah, my new purpose was.
That must have been, was that harder than anything else?
Harder than the SAS.
Harder than the SAS, harder than the police, harder than the racism growing up?
Yeah. I guess it was in the context of it, like I could die. I could die.
That's when you wrote your memoirs?
That's when I wrote my memoirs.
You thought any day?
Yeah, so I had 3 strokes and then I had heart surgery. And the main stroke was in January 2014 when I actually lost 30% of my eyesight. So I can't see you now. I'm actually legally blind. And so with a blind, but I had 3 of those, and I thought the next stroke could take my eyesight. Or even worse, could kill me. So I had another stroke in 2016 and I had heart surgery. And I couldn't work. I was sitting at home and I think, what do I do? Where do I go? And that's when I started writing my memoirs about what I leave for my children and my moko. So if I do die tomorrow, then they can pick that book up and know who their grandfather or their father really was, and grandparents, and our purpose in life coming to New Zealand, and then they can close that chapter. It's just it just manifested into this book.
It's beautiful, man.
Just and in the book, it's really rationalizing. As I said, I really thought deeply as to how was I thinking, what drove me, what were those things that the hurt that I had and was exposed to me, how did I manifest that to be a positive thing, and grow from it, as opposed to, in other words, finding peace. How did I find peace with things around being let go from the police and all those types of things at this end? How do I reinvent myself? And when I left the police, people were saying, police has been your life. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when, you're disabled, you're in your 50s? And all I said to myself and kept saying, that little voice was, I told people, Vitale's successful because of Vitale, not because of the police. And when I leave here, I'll be successful again. And some will say, oh, yeah, right. But deep down inside, I didn't know if I believed that. I didn't know, but I had to keep telling myself, that's got to be the story. That's got to be the story, that when I leave here, although I'm disabled and in my 50s, I'm going to have a good life when I leave here. and really believe in that. And what's my purpose now? Because, you know, I nearly died, and also spending time with my family. I remember I was walking down driveway with Alex, my eldest, and we were chatting away, and I got given a job that I was going to work Monday to Friday. I thought, oh, this is good. And I said to her, Alex, I'm working normal hours now. And she goes, normal hours? Yeah, like Mum, you know, because Mum works Monday to Friday. And she said to me, but you do work normal hours. And I thought, and she was 16. And I thought, she's 16 and my normal hours is I'm never here. I'm out there on shift work, call outs. And she was 16 years old. She's coming up 31 now. But I'll never forget that conversation. So when I got sick, I used to think, you know, I've got to work hard, career, I'm a provider for my family, and then my health. And when I got sick, I flipped it over and I thought, it's got to be my health and my well-being, because without me, what's going to happen to my family? And then the third, and work, I can deal with work. You know?
It's so wild, because we've kind of got no choice in some ways but to try and find the positive. But also there really are positives. Like if you don't get sick, let's say you go all the way to today as a top cop and, you know, maybe there was no time for your family.
No.
Maybe that thing happens. Maybe it doesn't happen because of that. But the positive is you're sick, but then you can only give time to your family.
Yeah.
What a wild thought, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. And I guess what I say is, don't look at today. You know, I had that time in March 2015 when I was let go. It was the 15th of March that week. And I sat there and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? It was only January, the year before, that I was sick. You know, I had my first stroke, and now just a little over a year, I've got no choice. I have to go. What am I going to do? I'm 52. I'm legally blind. It was misery, and I can't get the benefit. I didn't know what life meant anymore, and I reflected back to the SAS and stuff. I thought, what do I do? And the depression, sitting at home, and then the kids going off sitting there for 9-10 hours by myself. It just consumed. I couldn't drive. I had to walk everywhere. And I thought, how did I get here? And I got out of that. No one helped me. But it was just really, really focusing on getting better.
You think your dad's voice was popping up every now and then?
Certainly was.
Get up.
Yeah. And as I say in the book, his voice was saying, Kulunga, get up, and Whamalosi is a different game we're playing now. Yeah, but same rules apply. Yeah. Wild, eh?
Beautiful.
Yeah. And even to this day, I don't know, you know, with the love of Annette and my family, but what was driving me, you know, and once I find that with the anger, the grief, the loss of something, and that's when you're down. You know, I'm angry because I was let go. I'm grieving 37 years in uniform. I'm disabled, all that grief, and then it comes with anger as to why people let me go, and you've got to go through that period. You have to. That's when I'm on the ground, and then as Dad says, you got to get up. You know, it might take you a year or what, but get up. And once I've accepted it, once I come to accept and go, what can I control? I can't control the past, but what can I control to make my life better? And once I came to that juncture, which took a long time, then I kulunged and I stood up, which took a lot of strength. And then I navigated forward. Then I found the speaking. Then I found my new calling, then somebody asked me on to TEDx, did somebody ask me to write a book?
Now you're an author.
Yeah, no, I'm an author. I would, oh, wow. And I never would have had that if I was in New Zealand Police.
Yeah.
I'd probably be an assistant commissioner sitting in Wellington, still with that uniform, if I had survived those strokes. You know, I may not have survived because of the stresses of policing, and God's looking after me, and I'm blessed.
What was it like for your wife? Because I never asked you that. But must have been tough.
Of course. You know, we've been together since we were teenagers, and then she had to look after the kids. When I look back and then, my youngest was 13.
And she never had you around. Then she had you around.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I was there. It was really hard when we had done so much together to get us into this position. And then I was always the strong one. I was always the one making decisions and being the pillar, I guess. And now I was where I was. And that's what drove me too. I needed to be there for her. I needed to, because, you know, nothing, you're still a parent, right? It doesn't matter through health or through ill health. You still have to be a parent. And we used to cry a lot in the bedroom, but come out, you know, and be vulnerable. But, you know, one day they're going to face their own demons. And, you know, what's the example that we can provide together? So we grew closer in terms of that. But it was really hard for her, particularly in those, she was the only one working. She was the only one working with 3 kids at uni, me not working. It was tough.
She proud of you with the book?
Oh, she really is. It was it's an emotional thing. The book was finally finalized only about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was a hell of a journey. It really was. And it's something that she sat close with me in terms of writing and what I should put in, what I shouldn't put in. And all the kids contributed to that. So, yeah, but she's still going strong. Yeah, she did 34 years in the police unit, and now she works for Ministry of Social Development. Yeah, and so do I. Yeah, she got me a job there, so that's what I'm doing.
See?
Yeah.
Always good to have a person on your side. Pull some strings.
Yes, yeah.
Man, I love talking to you, and you know this because that's how we talk. And I also am aware that just like your book is a piece of historical fact and your memoir, so is kind of the podcast. Yeah. And in some way, for me, I've been using this podcast as a way to, I guess, remember my mum. So a year ago, she passed away.
Oh, well.
And that's okay. You know, I'm cool. We left cool. And I remember her very fondly. But I did a series of recordings because she had cancer. And I was really gutted with myself because I should have said, Mum, say you love me.
Yeah.
She did in real life, but I just didn't ask her. And I wanted to make an effort with my guests that they will say they love them on something recorded so that your kids can hear it one day, so that their grandkids. So sounds a bit weird, bro, but can you just, while we're recording, can you just tell a few people that you love them so that it's recorded?
Yeah.
Maybe your kids, you know, your wife.
And I do, and I love them dearly. Annette and Dylan, Alex and Tilamai, and also my grandchildren now, Leilani and Yosefo. And Mum, she's still alive. And my dad, stepdad, he has cancer as well. And love, and you know, it's a word we take for granted.
What do you
sometimes.
hope for them in the future?
Just that they find happiness. You know, like I found happiness in what I endeavoured. That they, and also when things happen to them and aggrieve them over years and adversity, that they let go of that. You know, that they find a way to let go and bring peace back into their hearts, however hard it is, because once you find that peace, you can move on. And, you know, I tell you what, there was a lot of things that happened to me growing up, even the way I manifest, the way New Zealand was back then, New Zealand was finding its own maturity. It was finding, I think about Samoa with all these people coming in and how New Zealanders, Balangis were feeling. It would have been an intrusion. Who are these people? And that's how I flip it to say, they weren't right. They weren't wrong. They were just feeling exposed and vulnerable. And what happened was the way I was treated. So I make understanding of that and think, it's all right. They're good people. We were just maturing as a nation. And for my kids, to really just find that peace. Because without it, you will never move on. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they're absolutely happy in what they want to do. And the three of them are doing really, really well, even though it was tough for them at times, especially when I was ill and they could see me suffering. And, they were doing really big degrees to get into jobs that they're in now. And I said to Annette, as long as I hang in there until they finish their degrees, I don't care if I die the next day. And they managed to finish their degrees, and now they're professional people doing their work.
Was that a big milestone for you, seeing them graduate? I mean,
it was
you did school C twice, and you didn't get the hat throw, I bet.
No. I got that in later life.
True.
But no, it was, I just didn't want to cause them something that was going to prevent them from reaching their dreams. And when I got sick, they were halfway through their degrees and stuff. And Alex had to do review a year because I was so unwell. And I said to Annette, I reached my dreams, and my purpose is being well for my kids so they can reach their dreams, and they did. But I know that they would have struggled if I wasn't there. And now they're professionals living their lives.
And I suspect that you giving yourself that challenge helped you, even if you didn't believe in you, you could believe in you enough for them.
And that's what kept me. See, I flipped it. It was about me being well, me being spiritually well, strong and fit for my family, because I wasn't there that much before. And in the endeavors of their life, if I can be around, and I said to Annette, if I die the day after Alex finishes her degree, my job's done. Because that was my purpose in life. Yeah. Luckily I lived on. Right?
Forever.
Well,
yes.
Yeah. And I hope that, that makes, and everyone finds that thing that's going to make them, and everyone has it in them. That's why I say that there's nothing special about me at all. I just happen to have to go through the essays again in the police, right?
You did the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Where can people find the book? Where can people buy the book?
Well, the book is, you can purchase online, pre-orders, and it goes on sale on the 1st of September, which is 5 weeks away.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm proud of the book because, and to HarperCollins, who believed that I had something there that could help people, which to me, it was just going to be private memoirs for my family. So, and I guess the reason for that was for them to understand, and whatever I wrote in those memoirs can give them some comfort and resilience, and whatever those things are, to enable them to navigate through life. And now I can share that beyond my family. But I just want to acknowledge Alex for believing in me and saying, and because of that, I can share that, whatever value that may bring to people.
One of the gifts by podcasting is I get to meet people like you, and you're a huge influence in my life, positively. And I just want to say thank you for saying yes to these multiple times coming on the podcast and sharing your story with us. And feel very lucky and hopeful, and until we meet again.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure, and to you, you've done so well since we first met years ago. And I feel honoured to be asked to be here today in Vitale Lafaele.
This episode of A Beacon of Hope is proudly brought to you by Campfire Studios. Campfire Studios is an impact-led organisation amplifying the voices of Māori and Pasifika communities via podcasting and video content. To find out more, visit campfirestudios.co.nz. 2, 3, 4. Thank you for tuning in to this frequency of hope in our podcast today. If you found value from this episode and want to hear more, I would love it if you could follow, subscribe, and rate our show. By doing so, you will increase the frequency of the Beacon of Hope. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, please take a moment to hit the follow or subscribe button and leave a rating and review. I truly appreciate your support and feedback, and it helps us make our podcast even better. Thank you.
Be good, be safe, and be happy. Yeah. Sounds like that song, doesn't it? Be happy.
All right, Mama, we'll stop there, eh?
Yeah, okay. All right.